Hello and welcome to Experiment Lab Daily Show with JK. I'm JK. I'm joined with Walter. Walter, welcome back. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. It's good to be here. Hope you're good as well.
Yeah, it's been an exciting week and a lot is going on in our experiment project. I felt really happy that you joined us, and also we have started talking about this, and our team on the background, they're doing a lot of work and they've been super busy, and even with the live project they were not able to join us. Otherwise, like, I was planning to invite them, and so that like you will understand like what exactly is happening, right? Even for the audience, right? It's just like I would say like a promise to the victims, right? You are not alone. You're not alone in this world, and just like you or anyone who is suffering, like, you can look for other people who are in the same position. They can be helped through foundations like this, right? Stop Now, or for the sake of experiment, some of the volunteers who are working on the background, on the back for us. Our team is really doing a good job. So if you get to know that, like, you hear from a group of people, there'll be confidence, right? Okay, it's not just one man's story. One man is kind of making up things and telling these stories. So what do you think, Walter?
Yeah, I think it's always important where there's something going on. Is never you're definitely probably never alone with that, and I think it's best to always try to find people who can help solve that situation or help make it better, help you get restitution for it. And I think that's what this project is aiming for, and that's a good way to create change in an issue that, from what I was reading, definitely needs has had some negative publicity, but just not enough effort to get the whole process as to how it functions changed.
Yeah, that's right. I was planning to bring in some more evidence, or invite some people for us like to have some conversation, just not with us, but with the kind of panel where we can debate, or talk about what exactly we can do on this front. Again, different stories are there, right? So what is your take on where do we go from here? What do you envision for us, like, to continue to do excuse me, on this show?
Well, from here, as far as the project goes, I definitely think that is the next step is getting as many different organizations involved with the message and getting as many people that are willing to come forward and get their stories together and start getting content articles out there and pitching those to different organizations that have also covered immigration issues in the past, and in front of even influencers on YouTube or social media that might be willing to share something about it, to get as many eyeballs on the issue as possible. Because I mean, I was just reading that there's definitely been attention to the H-1B visa, mostly on that people saying corporations are getting cheaper labor and saving $20,000 per worker, and most of it's directed toward that, and saying it's taking away jobs from Americans. But for the H-1B visa, you have to show that there's not enough Americans in whatever field it is that are experts in that field to fill that position. And you have to have a degree, or you have to have a bachelor's or master's. Master's even has a $20,000 people extra that are allowed of the 60,000, 55,000 cap on the H-1B visa every fiscal year. So I do think you need to get more attention on the fact that there's abuse for the workers that come over, Perhaps there's a reason as to why that their companies are paying more or less, because some companies aren't paying at all. So I think, and they're using it as an extortion racket, which is very illegal. It's almost like if you, I mean, a documentary on FIFA Uncovered was just released earlier this morning on Netflix, and talked about how there's a lot of extortion type trading lots of money for votes. It's kind of sort of like that on a smaller scale. And it's like you can't do that, or the FBI might knock on your door, kind of situation. So I think that's the thing that really that the push to how this is such a labor violation, and it's harming multiple people and taking advantage of people who just were looking to come here to work for a certain period of time.
Yeah. Again, I was thinking in different angle, right? So not in solution wise, right? Because for me, it's kind of a burn out day in, day out. Like you keep talking about these vulnerable stories that is kind of heartbreaking, and we can't do anything about it, right? So it looks more serious and painful for me as well, like repeating it. So my question is to you, like, how do we make it like more upbeat or fun? Make fun of yourself on this. That's one thing. Like again, no offense to anyone. We are not making mockery of others' misery here. But I was looking for some solution, and even I found out like one funny video. I thought like probably we can play that out. And I would like to caution again, we are very young and just started few months ago, and YouTube is like Google was great enough like for us like to partner with us and also provide us like the channel to be monetized. That is in a good way, but we have to follow the rules, right? So copyright violation, infringement, or any cyberbullying, all those list of uh, uh, compliance like policies they have, we violate that, like they will take us down, right? And if we have more than 3 strike, like the channel will be terminated. And I don't want to end up in that space again. So that's why like I'm cautioning to our viewers, this video is available in the public as well. And it is in one of our campaign site as well, right? We have gathered like a lot of information around different people from different media organization, just like individuals who are expressing their anger with the problem on H-1B, problem with life on H-1B visa, and the controversy over H-1B visa, like the news channel reporting, and an immigrant story on H-4 visa. This is more interesting story. I thought like, and how people are, particularly Indians stuck in green card backlog. So that story, and this one attracted me. So I thought like probably we can play this out. What do you think, Walter? It's just a 5-minute clip.
That sounds good.
So this is like Indians on H-1B waiting for green card. It's a funny video. So they just made a kind of a skit. Again, Walter, I couldn't understand anything, to be honest. I was looking at the subtitle. Anyway, that is kind of a funny joke they make on themselves.
Yeah, I mean, reading about it does seem like that process takes a long time and you have to keep reapplying for other visas while waiting for green card, which, yes, for people who don't know, is a permanent residency. So I mean, it doesn't seem like a very fun process at all. And from people that I've known that travel to the United States, it's just all of it's very difficult to get into the United States, even if it's for just like a traveler's visa and stuff like that. So it's, yeah, I definitely feel for people trying to do it the legal way and run into a lot of pitfalls.
Yes, again, so we are not into that process, so we cannot really understand what's going on over there. Even with the agency or the attorneys that are doing this, like they just say that like, oh, it is through the policy in which like we are trying to implement it and it is on the backlog, we can't do anything about it. And there is a restriction based on nationality. So that's where like, if one particular country comes to take over and come in large number, they are trying to limit that. Maybe certain things are created for good reasons, but it doesn't look like we are following through the human rights and advocating those things at international level in UN and all the other things, right? So how we treat others tells more about us. So that's where like I am still struggling to understand like why this is happening and why, if we are bringing in talented people and you are going to treat them like this, you are making enemies for yourself, right? So if people are frustrated, they will find a way like to definitely screw you back, right? It's not just one-way street, right? Only you can screw them and they can't, or what? That's where like I'm just not able to get some words to express in this, right? So help me out now, Walter. How do we, even in terms of talking to an audience, what do we bring to them? What is the message that we are trying to convey here?
I guess the biggest message I would say is that we can do something about it. It's just going to take a lot of people working together to make that change. I think that's the biggest message we can really say, because I mean, like, yeah, it's going to be hard, it's going to be tough, and there seems to be a lot of bureaucracy going on, and people in the position that they're in that don't feel like it's a need to really change what's going on. I mean, there's been talk about the H-1B visa and stuff like that, as I mentioned earlier, but it hasn't been a push to really look inside the program and see, look at the human rights violations that seem to be going on. And that's an issue which needs to be highlighted. So I mean, it's going to be a struggle, definitely, but I do think it's something that we can show people and tell people, like, yeah, we can make a change. And and I mean, I think also while talking about specifically the H-1B visa, there's also other human rights violations that are going on and human trafficking things that are going on that you can get allies by talking to people from different groups that focus on that and showing that you can help them as well. So I mean, the biggest thing is to have as many allies as possible, have as many people fighting for the same goal that are on your side, and then that's how you can create a groundswell of a current that can almost be so overwhelming that it kind of pushes politicians into change, because that they react the most when they think their political careers are in jeopardy. So I mean, that's kind of the best way to get their attention, that or bribe them, but that's a different story.
Yeah, funny that like you brought that up, right? So even with the politician's career, right? So they just have to pick sides and they try to play safe in certain things, and when it comes to campaign funding or even with billion-dollar companies, they don't want like to mess up with them, right? So they just take sides, and even same side goal, they do it, right? Those kind of things are going to happen. So it is always going to be a struggle, right? How we, whether you are in this nation or in some other nation, right? It's constantly going to be a fight between two viewpoints, and I am right always, and that's how like we end up in court. That's how I see that, like even the legal system as a business, right? It's kind of being operated in a way that to keep control on the society, but still people get to do what they want to do, right? So unless you get caught, you are free to do whatever, which is not the case in many other countries, and that's exactly what is happening here. Everybody says that like, oh, it's a great democracy, it's a free country, you can do whatever you want. That leads to a whole lot of complications.
As we can see with politics in the past just 6-7 months, I mean, there are definitely sides that don't want people to do whatever you want to, even if that's restricting what people with uteruses can do with their own uteruses or stuff like that. But there's definitely restrictions on things. I mean, there's reballot measures for marijuana that didn't pass on this Tuesday election day. The religious groups were pushing against them. So I mean, there's definitely things that people want to restrict others from doing. I mean, as far as having universal health care, single or multiplayer system, the United States is the only first world country that doesn't have one. And there's people on both sides who don't want that to change because of dark money influences and politics. And I mean, that's kind of what a lot of it comes down to, is who's using a super PAC to influence who, and what is the deals that are going on in backdoors that might make politicians support certain things other than others, and why is that the case? I mean that's kind of what it does boil down to, I think. And there are definitely a lot of things in that realm that need to be changed. I mean, we're still fighting to not allow politicians and their immediate family to trade stocks because they have information on what's going to go on in Congress that could influence the stock market. So I mean, that's a thing that seemed to be obvious, but when there's millions of dollars at stake, politicians are kind of slow to not prevent themselves from being able to game the system. So it's very complicated thing, I think, and how that affects the H-1B visa program. That's good. That's an interesting thing that will be to look into. I mean, the thing we a lot of the talk is about is it taking away jobs from American citizens, but again, to even get the H-1B visa, you have to at least have a bachelor's degree and master's, and so the cap is only at $65,000 a year. And then if you have a master's degree, you're allowed 20,000 more around the world that are allowed to get that visa per year. So it's not exactly like millions of people are coming in on an H-1B visa or anything like that. So I think the attention is pointed at the wrong thing about the H-1B visa right now.
Yes, to your point, right? So what about that is being debated on in that circle is like, oh, it's minuscule, right? Why you are focusing on that and making that as a big issue? It's not, it's just 60,000 people in a year. The problem is how we treat them, right? So they just have framed the rules with good intention, but how it is being implemented and how it is being exploited, that has to be monitored, right? So that's the issue here, right? Even some people want to talk about meritocracy, right? People with merit has to come, and it should not be a lottery-based system. Just because it's a lottery-based system, like they kind of have the scheme, right? So it's like a permutation combination kind of probability, and how many applications you submit, based on that, you will get at least one picked up. And even people who are not eligible or qualified are being drawn into that lottery system, right? That's the reason, like, some people are against it. You cannot do this as a lottery. But if you, based on merit, if you do it, again, there is another exploitation that's going to happen, right? Big companies will have a say, and those who are employed in that company alone will be able to come in. And there are other visas as well for business managers or highly skilled people to come into, right? They don't have to compete in H1B lottery and come into this, right? That is where, like, we are still struggling to understand where do we draw this line. The problem for me is, like, even if they have got the lottery, right, and they got selected and they have been offered, and then restricting them, like, not to renew it, or having, again, on the other side, it's not just monitoring, right? Putting a lot of restrictions for them, like, to look like they are chained, right? It's like, why can't we just give the individual people the visas and let them decide, like, with their life, right, what they want to do, right? Whether they want to come here or work for this company or that company or whatever company. So visa should not be, the sponsorship should not be tied to the employer. That is my contention, right? My issue is, like, I still don't understand why anyone has to depend on another person, right? As long as a child turns 18, he becomes an adult, right? So they don't have to depend on anyone else. So when we are inviting professionals, we should treat them in professional way, right? Give them the right to own their visa and do with what they want to do in their life. So they are accountable for it. That is something I still don't understand. What is your view on that?
It does seem like the tying it to, it's kind of like, I mean, I liken that to the insurance in the United States right now. A lot of it is tied to your employers, and that causing people to stay in jobs they don't want to really have, and keeps them from being entrepreneurs because they don't want to lose their insurance. And I think it's kind of a similar thing. Like, why are we tying something like that to one employer? Because then that's literally how abuse can happen, because they can threaten to go out, pull the visa, and you'll have to leave, or if you can't find another job in 60 days. So I think that's creating a system where you're dependent upon pleasing this one employer rather than having the visa and being able to go work where you see fit or apply where you see fit, and that way. So I think that step in the process is what's causing a lot of the issues on the abuse to happen.
Yeah, it's just not to focus on, again, the experiment lab is mainly for this issue, and it is for our campaign, and that is being run. And the other topics that you told about, the politicians having hand on women rights, right? So the abortion, and that's a whole lot of a big topic, and a controversy keeps on burning for a long, and how we can bring in and talk about those things in our talk shows. That is something, like, we can always do it and address those issues. It's a sensitive public issue for everyone to know about it and talk about it. But this is more exclusive for only a group of people, immigrants, non-immigrants, whatever category that is. Walter, before we wrap up, right, we try to limit it with a time box, like within this period, like we'll end this episode. So we'll continue our conversation, but an interesting story I read a long back. I thought, like, we can talk about that maybe in the coming episodes. Do you know that, like, more than 40, I'm not sure, like 46 states legally allow child marriage?
Yes, actually, so a funny story about that. I was actually trying to break a story on that a couple of years ago for an outlet, and they didn't want to publish it because I didn't blame, honestly, it was because I didn't blame Donald Trump enough, and I pointed out to them how this has been happening for a while, and it's not a one-party issue, and I pointed to how many states it was happening in that have Democratic control. Like, this is a national problem. This isn't a partisan problem. And they didn't really want to do that, so I ended up kind of selling the story to another outlet, and they pushed it out there, and then it kind of went viral. So I was quite upset. I ended up, to be honest with you, I ended up leaving that one outlet because I did some investigative research there, and they didn't want to run with it because I didn't want to make it a hit piece, basically.
Yeah, so that's I couldn't believe that, right, when I read the story and I found out like some non-profit organizations like activists, if I'm not wrong, it's called Unchained. Probably we can reach out and try to invite someone like from there. Like, they are fighting against this in all 50 states. And that's how like I came to know that. And I was so kind of shocked in a way that it looked like how we refer like other countries as third world countries, economically not able country, only do this and they have no human rights or even women rights and child abuse. But when it is happening in our own backyard, we are shrugging it under the rug and saying that like this is it is democracy. It's a shame. That's something I just wanted to talk about it like at some point of time in our maybe in our talk shows. With that, like probably we will wrap up today, unless you have anything else to add.
No, I think that's everything. That is something I did look into. And yeah, I wanted to break something on that, but yeah, so that is interesting that that comes up. But yeah, I was aware of that when something was happening in New Jersey a couple of years ago regarding that.
All right, then we will talk about it. Thank you all. Bye for now.